Hello, everybody. I'm Dennis Schleicher, and I'm the president of the Connecticut Authors and Publishers Association. And we'd like to welcome you for joining us today as we hear from our friend Jim, who is responsible for all the editorial operation content and strategies at booktribe.com while developing new marketing programs to help authors get in front of readers. So I'm going to turn this over to my friend Jim. But before we do that, I would like to see if anybody has any success stories they would like to share. You can either raise your hand or you can unmute yourself and just pop in if there's something you would like to say. If you have a new book that's being released or coming out.
Dennis produced a new book for one of our members, and the cover was referred to as gorgeous. So for that reason, I'm getting in and talking about it.
So what's the title of the book, Joe?
The title is The Girl Out of Brooklyn.
Brooklyn, excellent.
And it's basically a story about somebody who's had a very good life and is talking about her memories, but there's some useful information in there too for everybody as far as holidays and spirits and things that go on in Brooklyn. So it's sort of a dual type of book, and it's very, very good. And the author, by the way, is Reingold, our member, Martha Reingold, if you're familiar with her.
Excellent, excellent.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you so much for that success story. Do we have anybody else that would like to share their success story?
I have two quick successes.
Yes, that's great. You have a book coming out.
I had a short story accepted to an anthology. Excuse me. As soon as I go to talk. I had a short story accepted to an anthology with Owl Hollow Press. It's the anthology is New Frontier themed, and mine is like a space short story.
Oh, that's excellent.
And then my other quick success is my 7th novel is coming out on August 31st.
Awesome. Awesome. Good to hear that. That's a true pleasure.
What's the name of that? What's the name of that novel?
The novel or the anthology?
Your last book.
The novel, it's called The Gray Mage, and it's the 3rd book in my YA fantasy series, the Realm of Camellia series.
Thank you.
So, Robin, I'm trying to share in the chat, and it won't let me open it, booktribe.com. Can you just share that so everybody can have Jim's website?
Will do.
It just won't let me do it. All right, so without any further announcements, I'm going to say, turn this over to Jim, and he's going to share with us some awesome media strategies that we can use to market to the world.
Oh, is that what I'm supposed to talk about? I didn't know that. I thought this was just, how we're preparing for the storm. But okay, I'll let me share my screen and see if I can get this presentation on. Okay. There we go. Can everybody see this?
Yes.
Yes, everyone can see this silly cartoon. So yeah, I found this a while ago. Here's the guy. I've done it. I finished writing my book about teenagers, and then his wife chimes in. Great. Maybe now you'll get around to tidying up your room. As silly as that might sound, it's interesting that line, I've done it. I've finished writing my book, is maybe half the battle, because then a lot of authors haven't really, it's the next, now you're going into the business phase and marketing it. How am I going to get people to read it? So as innocent and as funny or not funny as this is, really that idea, you're not quite done once the book is done. And we'll get into that. Okay, why can't I advance these? Whoop, there we go. Okay, so before I even tell you more about me and who I am and what we're going to talk about. Let's see if we, I know whenever you come to a session like this, you always hope, am I going to take anything away? And I don't know that you will. I hope you do. Well, I think we'll have a fun chat about a variety of things relating to book promotion and marketing. But let me throw an idea at you. So this might not be a new concept. Some of you might already be doing it, but it's a little idea that we do a lot when we work with authors. And it's as simple as describing your book as a cross between two other well-known books. I'm sure many of you are doing that. And again, it's nothing that, an innovative idea that we came up with, but think about that. Think about, a two-book comparison, okay? What does this accomplish? First of all, it creates an immediate soundbite for you. It if you pick the right books, and why not, associates your book with two popular books, which is a good thing. Yeah, I think it creates a visual image, because when you're saying my book is sort of a cross between this one and that one, people are looking at the books, and hopefully you're picking books that are recognizable, that maybe you've modeled after or inspired to be. But and I'll give you some examples. So it helps create that visual image, and it's something you can use in all your promotions. So let's take a look at one. Okay, we worked with an author a while back. His name is Andrew Gross. I don't know if anyone's heard of him. He wrote a book about the Jewish mafia called Button Man, the Jewish mafia. And whenever someone asked him, so what exactly is your book about? And he could go off and talk about what the book is about. But a simple way of describing it is The Godfather Meets the Chosen. Okay, so again, it's about the Jewish mafia. If ever there was an iconic book that talked about the mafia, The Godfather is it. And then The Chosen, another very well-known book about the Jewish religion. So that's how he would describe his book, The Godfather Meets the Chosen. I hope as we're talking about this, that some of you think, okay, so if I'm already doing it, great. If I'm not, and I can add something like this, what two books would I pick that are somewhat of a cross between mine, even if it's not exact? People can start associating, okay, it's about mafia and crime, it's about Judaism, okay, let's go from there. I think it's a very effective way that I've seen a lot of people use with great success. We worked with an author who you're probably not familiar with. Her name is Kelly Oliver. She wrote some cozy mysteries. It was called the Fiona Figg mystery series. But look at what she says at the very top. Downton Abbey meets Agatha Christie. Okay, everybody is familiar with Agatha Christie. Everyone is familiar with Downton Abbey. And again, if she's trying to position her book as somewhat of a cross between the two, I don't know if there's a better way to describe what it's all about or to get a reader interested and engaged than to identify with two very well-known books or stories or brands that yours is maybe somewhere in between. Anybody doing that? Is that something that people are doing or have done, or does it sound like something, play with it with your own book, and I think you can have some fun and also just come up with a good marketing soundbite that you can use in all your materials, on your website and social media and the like. Okay. So there you go. I hope that's one takeaway.
Good idea.
Great. So here's what we're going to talk about today. Maybe we'll talk about this. Financially painless marketing tips for authors and ideas and expectations once the final words are written. Okay. Again, about today, we're going to talk a little bit about the current climate, what's going on in the marketplace, setting some realistic marketing expectations. That's very important. We talk to a lot of authors that, in my opinion, have unrealistic expectations, but we'll go through that. Defining and finding your audience a little bit, tips on that, some basic affordable essentials. Maybe we'll get to some specific programs, and certainly if we have time, we'll talk about anything else you want to talk about. About you, I guess, I don't know, it would be hard to sort of get a demographic. That's kind of this is a picture of the last audience I spoke in front of. So I wasn't necessarily expecting quite so many and quite the formal, but I assume you're all authors, yes? I guess you can nod your head. I'm sort of looking at you in the screen. And I'm guessing you've already published something. Liz, I know you have. Are there any just publishers, or are you pretty much all authors?
I think
I am a publisher.
Okay, great.
Publishers and myself, I'm a literary agent and an author.
Okay, I was going to say anyone besides an author and a publisher that I'm not including. Okay. And others affiliated that we haven't mentioned, maybe? And again, people who just want to put off trying to prepare for the storm. I live near the water, so I'm already panicking and sweating and moving things off my yard onto my deck and just anything to elevate it, because I don't know how bad this is going to be. About me, let me just give you my background a little bit. I'm the editorial director of Book Trib, which we like to think of as the leading source for book news and reviews. We're part of a larger 30-year-old literary marketing and publicity company called Merrill Moss Media. That's Merrill in the upper right-hand corner. I got my start in this business by being the marketing director for a podcast called Just the Right Book. It was hosted by Roxanne Cody. I don't know if you're familiar with the bookstore R.J. Julia in Madison, Connecticut. One of the leading independent bookstores really in the country. Anyhow, that was a lot of fun. That's how I sort of got my chops in the book industry. I've done a little writing for PR News. That's my dog Andy in the lower right-hand corner. I just thought it was a cute picture, so I thought I'd put it in. Then there's Howard Stern. I want to talk about Howard Stern a little bit. This is a story that has nothing to do with books, but it has to do with you never know what's going to work and what's not going to work. And as you know, marketers of books, you've got to try a lot of things. I don't know if you're familiar with that old cliche that 50% of all marketing works. If anyone ever heard this, 50% of all marketing works. Somebody want to give me the punchline? The punchline is
which half.
Right. You just don't know which 50%. So that's why you've got to try everything. So I want to tell you a story about Howard Stern. I was the communications director of a radio marketing company. It was our job what we did was we did the radio campaigns for many consumer brands, and it was my job to publicize our company and get brands familiar with us. So part of my responsibility was social media. So I would post everything on social media, and as most of you know, most of what you post on social media goes nowhere, and it doesn't really accomplish much, but you do it for that small percentage that does. So I posted something. I started a discussion to say, if the radio industry had a Mount Rushmore, who would be on it? Okay, it just seemed like a fun question to ask. What I couldn't have anticipated was we got hundreds of responses. People were coming up with, there should be this for, it should be that for, it should be this. It kept coming up, and people were rebutting what other people said, like, no, that person shouldn't be on, because this, it was just a whole debate, and it was a beautiful thing. And I went to my boss, who had been in the radio industry for 40 years, and I said, we just can't let this go on forever. We're going to have to name a Mount Rushmore. I said, don't worry, we're not going to have to build a Mount Rushmore. We're just going to have to name the 4 people who would be on it in the radio industry, which is what we did. We put together a press release, and sure enough, we put together a little piece of art, and one of the 4 was Howard Stern. So we issued the press release. We made sure that all of Howard Stern's people and Howard Stern himself was tagged in this. And the next day, our boss comes out of his car. He's been listening to the radio, and he says, "This is a home run. I can't believe it. Howard is busy reading our press release on his show. 3.3 million daily listeners, some crazy number like that. And he's reading it, and he's saying, and this was put out by CRN International, which is our company. He said, who knows what CRN International is or what they do, but he's mentioning this and talking about our release for about 10 minutes. Next thing we know, our website goes crazy to the point where it's not even operating, because we've never had traffic like this before. It was just nuts. And again, here's something that just hit a home run. It's not like I mapped out from the beginning, here's what's going to happen, here's our goal. We just threw out an innocent conversation, and it just resonated with an audience. And it's just a great story to tell, because you never know what's going to work and what's not going to work. There's just a slight addendum to the story too. I called the producer the next day, and I said, is there any chance we can just show up and give Howard a plaque? We'll have a picture of Howard shaking hands with our president. It'll take him 30 seconds. And I hear a pause at the end of the line, and he said, can you get here at 5 a.m. next Tuesday with your boss and with the plaque? We'll put you on the air again. And I said, wow, you mean you're going to, I said, far more than I ever could have dreamt. But he said, yeah, I think it's a fun segment, and Howard will have some fun with it. And that's exactly what happened. I mean, there's my boss, Barry, and there's Howard, and there's Barry presenting the plaque to him. It was another 10 minutes. They even said to us in advance, what do you want us to ask Barry? You know, and I'd say, well, tell us about your company, tell us about what you do and all that stuff. Tell us about, you know, how you came up with this concept. 20 minutes of free advertising on the Howard Stern show. Can you imagine if I had to pay for that, what it would have cost? So you just never know. You've got to try a lot of things. Some of them will hit. As innovative and creative as you can be, it always helps, but you never know. Okay. So just to give you, and we'll get into the marketing stuff in a second, just a little background on Merrill Moss. I said it was a 30-year literary marketing and publicity firm. We've worked with hundreds of authors who return book after book. It's the traditional blocking and tackling and media campaigns and publicity. You know, I can give you more information later if you'd like it. And Book Trib, you know, we're around for 17 years. We think of ourselves as a discovery zone for readers. We get about 70,000 readers a month on our website. And we're an editorial and marketing engine for authors and their publishers. We put together some programs to give them exposure to that audience, which we think is a pretty good size. So we'll talk a little bit more about Book Trib. Okay, so that's kind of who I am, what I do, and where the background is. Okay, so as we get into marketing, do I have anything left for marketing? Have any money left for marketing? Too often, we speak with authors who have written great stories. They're great with the language. They have told, they're superior in their craft. There's really a great product there. And they have this beautiful book that is now finished, and you know, they'll walk around with it, they'll take it for rides, they'll sleep with it, they'll take it to meals. They love this book, and they really haven't considered putting aside any kind of effort or funding or resources for marketing. You know, and really, and sometimes, let me tell you, you can spend $300 on marketing, you can spend $50,000 on marketing, and there's really no guarantee of your success. I mean, you try to do a lot of things. You try to get in front of a readership base as best you can. One of the more successful authors that we work with took him about 8 years to get on the radar at all. About 8 years and several books later, right now, whenever he writes a book, he goes immediately to the bestseller list. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Steve Berry. He writes thrillers. It took him a long time, but he had patience. He believed in himself, and he kept at it. So do I have anything left for marketing? You know, let's talk about expectations, because it depends where you want to go with your book. Let's talk about the 4 levels as I describe them. Level 1 is, you know, I'm happy to have written a book. I'm thrilled. If some of my friends like it, that's terrific. If I sell a few copies, okay, but I feel great about it. You know, pour me some wine and let's celebrate. That's fine if that's where you are, okay? Level 2 is, it would be nice if somebody read my book. You know, it's like the world owes me. I put all this effort into it, and now, you know, it's been out for a while. I just can't get anybody to read it. What's wrong with people? Level 3 is, okay, maybe if I can take some intelligent marketing steps, you know, put a little effort behind it, a little bit of a budget behind it. Let's see where this goes. It's a positive, healthy attitude that's realistic and probably a good place to be. Level 4 would be a great place to be too, and that is, you know, I want to be a bestseller. I want to be in the New York Times bestseller list. And who doesn't? And you'd be surprised how many people want to invest a couple of $100 with us, and they say, my goal is to get on the New York Times bestseller list. And you know, it's one thing to put the marketing effort behind it. It's another thing that you have to have a book that's going to merit it. You know, I mean, that's, you know, let's not downplay that part of the equation. But it's all a matter of what your expectations are and where you hope to go. So let's throw out a dose of reality before we get into this. In 2020, and I don't have the more updated statistics, I think I saw some, more than 2.2 million self-published books hit the market. Okay, so that's just the self-published books. That's to say nothing of all the other books that come out of large, mid-size, and small publishers. There's a ton of inventory there, and there's a lot to choose from. So people could have great books and difficulty selling it because you've got to differentiate yourself from all the books, you know, that you see lying around there. It ain't easy, and not everyone's going to succeed, but it's not necessary. Book sales are not necessarily an indicator of the quality of your book. And I like to tell people that because they've put their heart and soul into it, and one does not necessarily equate with the other. Okay, that little yellow dot, by the way, that's your book. Okay, that's where your book fits in the grand scheme of things. It's really a competitive market out there. Let's throw this number at you to scare you yet again before we talk about some good things. The percentage of authors who sell at least 1,000 copies. Okay, so if you would be happy selling 1,000 copies, and a lot of people wouldn't necessarily be, but the percentage of authors, it's 0.0025%. That's a little frightening. You know, that's like saying my son hits the baseball kind of far, you know, when he plays with his elementary school friends. What are his chances of being a Major League Baseball player? You know, it's really a small percentage of people that can sell 1,000 copies and that can, you know, quit their day job and say, I'm going to be a full-fledged author. Okay. But I said there was a however there. There's encouraging news. And that is in 2020, that was the best-selling year for print books in the US in the past decade, up in every category. You know, why would that be? Well, we've gone through a very strange time in our world over the last couple of years. And the one thing that has been safe, accessible, and affordable as a leisure activity is reading. So we've heard from tons of authors. Our business really flourished over the last couple of years. I'm kind of embarrassed to say so, but it's because authors saw an opportunity that people can still read and people want to read, and their choices, they don't have as many choices as they used to. So reading has gone up. We have a question, comment? Somebody have a thought? We have a book club program where we send authors' books to 60 different book clubs around the country. And we had just gotten a new batch of excuse me for a sec. Okay, I'm sorry. I just realized there's a chat and there are some comments, so I thought maybe I should pay attention to that. Let's go back. So we have this book club program, and we send books to the book clubs. And it was just about the time the pandemic was starting. And I reached out to them and I said, look, I know a lot of you aren't going to be meeting live. You'll probably be doing, you know, Zoom meetings like we're having right now. And I said, what should I do? I mean, I understand if you don't want us to send us the books. I don't know how you would get them to your members. And overwhelmingly, they said, please send us the books. If there was ever a time that we needed some normalcy in what we're going through, it's now. Send us the books. We'll figure out a way to get them to the various members. We're going to meet via Zoom. And you know, it was just very encouraging that our program just kept going, and every month we send them these books. So it's interesting what this pandemic has done. Just like a meeting like this, you know, it's a lot easier than to get in your car and drive to a venue and take some time doing that, as opposed to saying it's much easier for me to just pop in from home. I'm you know, having breakfast, sipping my coffee, and I can listen into this. So in a strange way, access to, you know, events and conversations and authors has actually increased a little bit. Kind of weird. You know your target market. Let's talk about genres, okay? When people try to define their genre, and it's important that they do, some people try to be all things to all people. And when I ask an author what genre, they'll list about 8 different categories. And I'll say, this is wonderful, but it's not like I'm in a supermarket going down one aisle trying to figure out, you know, what all this stuff is. I think you're much stronger if you can focus on a niche and target that audience rather than trying to be all things to all people. We have on our website, we have an area called the Author Discovery Zone. The first thing we add, and it's a listing of the authors, and they each have an information page, a lot of the authors that we work with. And one author once said to me, I don't know what genre I am. Can you read my book and tell me? And I thought, this is an author that's sort of not prepared to market her book. You sort of need to know, who am I going after if I'm going to start to market it? So I always encourage, try to be as specific as you can. We'll come back to this slide in a second. But when you try to define your genre, you can zero in as specifically as you want. Someone can say, I write nonfiction. That can mean a million things. It can be a business book. It can be a biography, medicine, history. I mean, I just put some random ones down there. As you know, I could have put, 500. Specifically, talk about who your audience is and try to figure that out so you market yourself as such. When you talk about thrillers, again, you can say I write thrillers, You can also say, I write sci-fi thrillers, horror, cozy mysteries. You can be more specific with romance. It can be erotic or it can be proper. Okay, though I guess those are the two ends of the spectrum, but you've really got to be specific and narrow it down. So one, so that you know, and two, so that the audience has a better idea of what to expect. And also when they do searches, again, you're not going to come up with everything. It's like when we do, when we do searches and add keywords for the different marketing programs that we offer, because we'll try to attract authors and publishers to what we're doing. If we use author as a keyword or promotions as a keyword, we're probably not going to go far. It really has to be maybe affordable book promotions or sci-fi authors, whatever we're targeting. If we just do something so general, it'll probably get lost in a sea of other keywords and promotions. So I would always encourage be as specific as you possibly can. Particular themes, whether you've written a nonfiction book or a fiction book, take a look at some of the characters you have, at the themes you are discussing, and see how you can market to those different groups. I always use the example, if there's a major character you have in your book who has ADHD or is suffering from something like that. Okay, so where do the people, what kind of people could you go after that would interest, where your book would be of interest? Just with ADHD, there's a magazine called Attitude. It's ADD, Attitude, which has about 40,000 subscribers. You've got to look at those markets and say, okay, here's an audience that would be very interested in my book. So you've got to try to look at that and identify those themes, and then find associations or different groups that it would appeal to. We worked with a retired firefighter who wanted to market his book. And, we were looking at all the different segments that he could go after. And I said, the obvious segment is who would be most interested. It was a novel, but certainly got into the world of firefighters, of all the people you could market to. The likely group is other firefighters. Whether they're readers or not, if they see a book about them and their life and what they do and what they feel and their emotions, what could be a better group? And we looked up 1.1 million firefighters in the United States. So what an audience. That's where this person can start focusing where they're going after. And you can be creative too. I mean, if your book is about, it has a pet involved or an animal in some way, okay, what can you do besides going after the typical audiences? Again, you want to find the groups that have this interest, but a pet store, the vet, I mean, you're not going to put many copies there, but these are places where you will stand out. You don't have to compete in a bookstore where somebody comes in and looks at the front desk and the front table and sees 50 books, and then they have all these books to choose from. Go where people have that interest level. We could go on to, depending on the topic, even if it's high school sports, if it's pop culture, politics, it could be domestic abuse. Find where those conversations are taking place, and try to get your book, try to talk about your book or get it where the readers are. Okay, with current trends, same thing. That's what we do all day as publicists. With the books that we're representing, every morning our publicists, they're like news hounds. They want to know exactly what people are talking about, what kind of conversations are coming up on talk shows, on radio, television, wherever it is, just on the internet, and where can I fit in? How can I, having written about a character or a topic like that, where can I add value to that conversation? That's where you can start start pitching some of these organizations to say, I'm an expert on that. I've written a whole book about it. I really get into the head of this particular theme. I have some insights that I think I can add to this. And again, it's hard work and you've got to do a lot, but you've got to identify those themes and try to figure out, how can I fit into those? Okay, what are the current trends going on? Over the last couple of years, there have been two major ones that have really superseded almost any other topic. And that, of course, is the pandemic and the election. So that people were focused on nothing else. So it was very hard to get earned coverage. But nonetheless, do the work and try to find, special interest groups, associations, hobbyists, events. Maybe there are events that are in your topic area that you can take advantage of. In social media, Facebook has so many groups that and again, we'll talk about the Facebook groups a little later. But try to find, where does your audience go to discover books? Okay, does that make sense? Any questions or thoughts while we're going through this? I'll keep going, but if I see anything, I'll try to address it. What's my genre? We talked about that. What is your book about? A couple of things. An elevator pitch. Just like your niche should be very targeted, you should be able to talk about your book in about 30 seconds. Here's what it's about. Here are the themes. And I've seen books, or I've read books, and people have asked me to describe them. And the first thing I do is sort of smile and chuckle, because I'm thinking, I don't know where to begin in trying to define what this book is about. And you ought to be able to have that. It ought to be on your website, and just so for whatever marketing efforts you're doing. Compare two well-known books to yours. We talked about this a little bit already. One of the examples, Harry Potter meets Gone Girl. Try to figure out a book that has that, somewhere in the middle of that. So let's talk about some basic affordable essentials, okay? And again, these are not shocking categories, but I don't know where you are, in thinking about them and what you're doing with them. We talk about websites, book reviews, certainly getting book reviews of your own book, books written by you about other books. We have a program, but we won't get into that right now. And then social media. Everybody always asks. I get all sorts of different levels of social media, but I have to tell you, most of the people we talk to, they say, I just don't have time for it. I can't do it. I don't know what to do. But if you can post and get involved and build followers and ultimately attract influencers, it's certainly a good thing to do. Social media events and book giveaways. Let's zero in on some of these, okay? A website. Do you all have your own websites? Yes, no, nodding heads. Okay. Not all people do. I always think to myself, why don't you've got to make it easy for people to find you. When an author gets in touch with us, or we're considering working with an author, the first thing I'll do is Google the author and find their website. If they have one. If they don't have one, that tells me a little bit about where they are in the process of marketing themselves and just positioning themselves. Nothing is necessary, but a website's a really good idea, especially if you're looking to, it's a home. Readers can find you if they want to learn more about you. If you're trying to attract publishers or agents, and you have a conversation with one, or you query them, first thing they're going to do is see if they can find your website, if you're not handing it to them anyhow, which is also a good idea.
Jim, if I can interrupt for a second, it's a requirement. I mean, literally, I will not represent somebody if they don't have a website, because that's their business card. And the thing that we do now is I have to do social media background checks to make sure people aren't buying followers, to make sure if somebody says that they have 20,000 followers on Instagram, that they actually are legit, what their engagement rate is, because we are responsible as agents when we sell a book to a publishing house. The publishing house is going to come to us when they find a challenge.
No, that's a great input. And you talk about, you have to validate the social media. That's a good point. A lot of people will buy followers and their numbers will look great, but if you zero in a little bit, you'll see that they really don't have that. Something else that I see a lot that I would recommend against. Everybody on their website is so interested in putting their social media handles up there. And it's another thing I always check. So first of all, you want to make sure you have a website. And I always check social media just to see what kind of followings you have. If you have 14 followers on Twitter, I don't think it's a good idea to put Twitter up there. So someone's going to click on that and see that you have 14 followers. I just think that's a bad marketing idea. That tells me that you created a Twitter account just so you can put it on your website. Either that, or you really need to put in the work somehow to develop it, or it's just not worth it. I represented an author. His name was actually he was an ADHD expert. His name was Edward Hallowell, and he wrote a very touching memoir. And I was working on a podcast that he produced. And we started building the social media following about 3 months before his podcast even launched. Because by the time it launched, when people were going to start paying attention to him and seeing who he was and visiting his social media, I don't want them to come and see 23 followers. It would be a waste to have it. So on the launch day, it took about 3 months, but he had several thousand by the launch day. So it looked like he was legit. And also he had entered into conversations, or we had entered into conversations for him months in advance, not all just promoting that we got a podcast, and we'll get into the social media breakdown later, but be careful. It's interesting that you check, the followers. I think that's very interesting, and is a good warning sign that you can't just buy them and have them. But if you don't have many, it's not going to be to your advantage for people to see that. Okay. Sticking with the website for a second, you want some kind of vehicle through which people can sign up and subscribe or follow you. Okay, because that's very key. It's very key prior to the book, and it's key as you go on with your career once the book is there. So, do you have a blog or a newsletter? That's great. That too, just another thing to do. But if you can keep communicating and getting something out there so people can see you and your name, that's a big positive. Certainly you want to put how to contact you, about you. That's another thing. Some people don't talk about themselves a lot, but if I'm interested enough in an author to go to their website, I want to know where they live. It's not like I'm going to knock on their door, but I just want to have an idea. Where are you from? What's your background? How did you get into writing books? That really helps. And some people do it better than others. Some people just are really warm and engaging in describing who they are. It doesn't have to be, something out of a corporate manual, but talk about yourself. You certainly want to talk about your books. You want, to let people know, here's where you can get the books, and here's how you can contact me. And to the point that it's a necessity, when you should have had this yesterday. Okay. Any other thoughts on websites while we're here? We can come back later. Let's talk about book reviews. Book reviews are kind of the holy grail of marketing. Book reviews, somebody else saying something nice about you. How great. A third party saying something about your work, rather than you going on social saying time after time, my new book came out, here it is, it's me. That's not necessarily as strong as somebody else. Earned media. In a perfect world, and this is, I guess, public relations 10, 15 years ago, publicists would work very hard to try to get earned media, to try to get an article about you placed somewhere, or a radio interview, a TV interview, an article in a newspaper. It's very hard, especially with the two main themes of news that I described earlier that took over the media for a couple of years. It's really hard. Also, and this sort of plays into why BookTrib was created 16 years ago. The media about 16 years ago started to curtail its coverage of books. They just were covering books less in daily newspapers. Why would they do that? Well, because it's labor intensive. You can't watch a basketball game in 2 hours and go back and write about it. You have to read a book. And reading a book takes some time, especially if it's a 400-page book. So I guess, and that's just for one book. So it can be labor intensive. A lot of the metros, cut it back. And that's when, so think of it this way. If the major best-selling authors had to scratch and claw to get coverage in the media, which now is covering them less, what does that say for all those self-published authors that we talked about earlier that have great stories to tell, are great with a language, but where in the world are they going to go to get coverage? So that's kind of why BookTrib was created, to give a voice to authors that people probably don't know about, but probably should. And the idea of earned media is tougher and tougher, and we know because that's our core business. So that's what we do all day long. Not Book Trib, but Merrill Moss Media, our parent company. It's a challenging task, and trying to do it on your own is really hard. But there are places where you can get reviews. Kirkus is one that everybody's aware of. Book Trib has programs too. And incidentally, if you pay for a book review, Book Trib is not going to write a negative review, but we're going to be honest. And we don't accept all books that want us to do a review of theirs. We're going to take a look and see whether it would resonate in our audience, if it would make sense, because we have an obligation to our readers as much as we do to the authors that are asking us to help them promote the book. We want to work together and say, yes, this is a great book. Now we want to tell our audience about it, and let's see what we can do. Pay to play, the idea, should I pay for a book review? A lot of people aren't comfortable with that idea, but I should tell you, since I've been at Book Trib, we get pitched all day long from publicists and publishers about, will you write about my book? Will you write about my book? We have far too many, and there are many good books, far too many that we could possibly cover. So we have programs, we have paid for programs where you can get in front of our audience in a variety of ways, as do other organizations as well. But I think the true telling sign is other publicists whose job it is to get that earned media will come to us and say, hey, we want to see if you can do a book review on a couple of our books. Let's talk about a program. That publicists will do that. So if other publicists are coming to us on behalf of their clients, I think in today's day and age, the idea is to get the exposure. Okay. And again, we're not going to cover you, we're not going to say anything negative. That doesn't serve any purpose, but we're not going to we're also not going to write about anybody. So that's kind of our policy. Any questions or thoughts on that? Reviews written by you of other books. This is interesting too, and this is an interesting marketing idea. We have a lot of authors that are happy to write reviews for us. We give them books, they write a review. That's kind of what they do. They like to see what other kind of work is out there, and they like to get the bylines. It's exposure for them. If somebody then, we have a bunch of authors, let's say an author's written five reviews for us. That's 5 bylines. Every time we write a little bio at the bottom saying, here's the author of this review, here's a link to their website. And you never know how often, we have a pretty large audience in our own right, but if that's getting shared and retweeted and this and that, it's a way to get somebody's name out there. And let's be honest, people are reading the review primarily for the book that's being reviewed, but it's also increased name recognition and credibility for the author who writes it. And you know what? It gives you something else to talk about on social media besides yourself. And we're going to get to social media in just a second. Op-eds. One of the things that attracts us the greatest is when an author, and look, we get a lot of pitches. The authors say, will you review my book? And the answer is usually we just don't have the resources, but you can consider one of our programs. What we do like is when an author says, I've written an article, or I would like to write an article for your website about some of the themes in my book, which I think are really prevalent in society today. And again, I've written a book about that, but the idea is not so much for me to sell my book. You can mention your book within it, but as an author of a book on a certain topic, you in effect have become a quasi-expert in that topic, and you are qualified to make some statements about it and to say some things. But that always attracts us because it's a little different from just a standard review. It's a different kind of piece for us to give to our readers, and it's providing an interesting perspective from someone that probably has an interesting perspective. So think about that. If I hear from every one of you on Monday, to say, I want to write a piece about this, a piece about that, I can't guarantee that we'll do it, but I'll read every email and consider it. And if several of them make sense, then I'll say, great, why don't you go ahead and write that? And we'll run it. We'll have a nice piece of art with it. You'll have the byline, and it'll be good coverage for us and something that you can talk about on social media and your old marketing. Hey, I wrote this article for Book Trip about whatever it is, check it out. It's something else you can talk about to get people interested in you. So I would consider that. Let's talk about social media. Free, easy marketing opportunity. Well, not exactly, because it's who said that? I mean, I think I put that in the presentation, but it ain't so easy. It's very time consuming, but it's a great opportunity. And we do a lot with Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Yes, we have a LinkedIn site, but I think those are the three primary ones. And I've written boost the posts. If you're posting a lot of things on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, I tell you that the Book Trip has 85,000 followers. When we post something on Facebook, I can pretty much tell you 85,000 people are not seeing it. A small percentage is seeing it. So what we try to do, if we can, is boost the post, which means invest a little bit more, spend a little money, and it really is not that expensive to increase the posts, to go to the top of our feed so that it'll get more attention from our audience. And what you can do when you boost posts on Facebook is you can pop in a bunch of keywords and demographics so that you can go after specific groups. Our firefighter can actually go after firefighters, in a post of that nature. But you can go beyond the Book Trip social media followers and into the feeds of people based on special interests. So what I tell people on social media, and I might have made a reference to it earlier, for all the social media you do, 95% of it is not going to be valuable in any in any way. But the 5% that is, that's why you do it. Okay. You're going to post a lot of things. And again, the idea is like the 80-20 rule. Try to post about a topic or something that will interest a group. And 20% of the time you can talk about your own book.
That's a good point you bring up, because I just, being an influencer on Instagram, I can use the swipe up feature. And when I promote a book, I also have an affiliate link with Amazon that I use. So I can track how many books I sell. So on average, when I share a story, I can sell, if 4,000 people see that story that goes away in 24 hours, I can sell on average of 20 to 30 books just by recommending a story. Okay.
No, it's a good point, and you've got to be careful. It's interesting with books. Books are a product, and promoting them is trying to sell them. But they're books. They're going to interest people. It's not like you're trying to sell a brand new toaster necessarily. So whenever Book Trip posts something, and again, we try to be careful too of engaging in conversations rather than just promoting specific books. But I think we can get away with a different percentage because we're going to an audience of readers. We're trying to interest them in different topics. Somebody asked, boost posts. How do I do that? You can probably go onto Facebook and there, if you have made a post, there's a way to look at it and see what you can do. It's really like advertising. You're really extending the post. Okay, so you'd have to find somewhere in your system where it allows for that, but it's there. Okay, and by boosting the post, I'm telling you, you can spend $5 or $10. Don't get scared. The more you spend, the more audience you're going to go to, but also it asks you for a demographic. It said, who do you want to reach? And again, if you say fiction readers, that's a case of being too general. You want to get more specific. You'll use up your money very quickly if you stay general. So you want to really target, here's an opportunity to target, alternate reality or whatever category is very specific to your book. But take a look. You should be able to follow that if you've done a post on Facebook. It should sort of prompt you where to go. You want to join in the conversations, converse in an unfiltered way. There are great social media groups. You can look, there's one group, Book Promotions. It's a good idea and it allows you to promote your own book. But if you're coming from the outside, all you're seeing is one promotion after another. Read mine, look at this, I just did this, I just did that. And it gets a little, weary following people, just about their own book. If you can engage in conversations, about a genre, about a topic, that's going to give you license to start talking about your own book. Okay. Building followers is very important. How in the world do I build followers? Well, follow your favorite authors. Start looking at the people who are following them and follow them. Okay, because you have like interests. The goal is that they'll see who you are and follow you back. But it takes work, and you've got to keep doing this. Ultimately, you want to attract influencers. How are we doing for time here? We doing okay? Got about 10 minutes? 10?
Yes, and then we can open it up to questions and answers.
Okay. I think we're doing okay. Attracting influencers. Okay, let's talk about influencers a little bit. An influencer, a person with a large following in your category who can influence their followers' actions. That's what you want to do, really. Somebody who really is an authority in your genre, in your category. You find them on Instagram and in a Facebook group. You see that they have a lot of followers. You want to get them to say something good about you. Okay, and it's not easy. And we actually Book Trip created an influencer network in different categories, in romance, YA, thriller, general fiction. I'm probably children's. I'm probably forgetting them. We put together 50 influencers in each of those categories that we can send your books to those influencers if you like. It's tough to reach them. Do I have to pay for influencers? Famous people that you would consider influencers, you could pay thousands and thousands of dollars for. Are there other ways to reach them? Yeah, it's not, wouldn't be so effective, but these are the people you want to hit. With our influencer network, if I have 50 romance influencers, let's say, people with very large following, and I just came out with a romance book. If someone said to me, well, who are you going to try to reach? I'm trying to market this on my own. What in the heck should I do? I would say the first, and again, I'm not trying to sell this, but if you could imagine 50 top influencers, I'm going to get them my book. And if a handful of them will say something positive about it, then I've scored. It's almost like trying to reach the media and have the media cover you. It's also going to people who have large followings in your category. If you can get in front of them, it's a great thing. But again, they're picky. They get books sent to them all the time. And your book really has to cut muster for them to say, okay, I'm going to endorse it to my followers. But when it does, that's a marketing success. Okay, I have the Random House example. If you let's say you did a book review, whether it was for Book Trip or any place, you did a review of a Random House book, and you posted it on social media, and you tagged Random House to say, hey, look, I just did a review of your book. I want to tell you, Random House, as big as they are, I think they have, 1.2 million followers the last time I checked, which was a while ago. But if they look at the review and they see the book and say, wow, this is a book we're trying to market, I'm going to retweet this. That too is a home run because they have a lot of followers. You might not have a lot of followers, but you've written a review promoting a random, and I'm just using this as an example, a Random House book that they're gonna tweet out to all their followers. They want a lot of people to see that. And again, people are reading the article. I don't want to, I don't want to misinform. They're reading the article because they want to read about the book that's being reviewed. However, they're gonna, some people will look at the author of the review. They'll see the bio of the author. They'll check out the author's website. Say, oh, look, this person's an author in its own right. You just never know. But when Random House is tweeting that to 1.2 million people, even if 50,000 of them are looking at it, even if 10,000 are looking at it, it's a way to get you and your name in front of a lot of people, and that's very important. What else? Let's just keep going. I'm looking at some of the chats. I don't want to break the flow, but I'll try to come back to that and see if I can answer some of those questions. Book giveaways. Okay. My way of thinking, and we have a program, it's not very expensive, where you can give books away and we'll feature you on our homepage and share it with social media. But giveaways. Any giveaway program you can get involved with. You know, our book club distribution is really, you've got to give us a lot of books and we're going to give them away for free. My thinking is the more books you can get in the hands of readers that have the potential to tell other readers about it, that's a good thing. Okay, I'm always in favor of that. You know, our book club program is a key word of mouth marketing program. You know, getting the book into the hands of 50 or 60 readers of different, you know, who belong to book clubs, who, if they like it, are going to tell the rest of their club about it. They're going to tell their other friends about it. You know, getting it into the hands of the right people that you hope will like it and share it on social or write a blog about it, I think is a very good strategy. You know, does it devalue your book? I just say that because I was asked to make some comments in an IBPA article that they were doing in their magazine, and they asked me, you know, what I thought about certain things, and I said this is one strategy that I think is a good one. And it was interesting that one of the other people they asked said the last thing I would do is give away books. You know, I'm giving you the devil's advocate here. They said I think it devalues your book to give them away. I don't think you should be so concerned about, you know, if you're giving books away, I don't think there's anybody that's going to think, I don't want this book, it's being given away, and now I think less of it. If they're interested in it, they'll want it. And if you can make it accessible to people, that's fine. Now, I don't want you to build your careers around just giving books away left and right and not selling any books. But I think getting that distribution, getting that access when you can, you know, getting it in the hands of people that will tell other people. I mean, you know, in the days where I used to have the luxury of picking the books I read, which I really don't since I've been with Book Trib, you know, my primary source for books was what my friends would tell me, you know, or people who I respected their opinion because we liked the similar books. So if you can get it in the hands of a lot of people that are capable of telling a lot of people, I think that's a great thing. Just other strategies. These are other things that, you know, whether you hire a publicist or work with a company, a media kit's always a good idea. Press releases. We actually have a program where we're writing press releases now for authors. Pitch letters you probably want to have. You're probably going to need those. How to have a good bio. 20 questions for distribution, readers guides. You know, anybody that works with our book clubs usually has that either on their website or they will insert it into the book. But it gives people ideas. Here's, you know, here's what we can talk about. Here's a book club discussion kind of point. And even if you're not in a book club, to see I mean, how many times do you go to the back of a book when you're done and you see like questions about this book? I like to hear the questions and see what the author themselves are asking, to say, here are some provocative questions. Blog tours are difficult to set up, but it's effective. Broadcast campaigns, of course, if you can get on TV, radio, or podcasts, always a good idea. We're just about winding down, but so am I. Book Trib programs for authors, you know, if you go to booktrib.com, I don't want to spend much time getting into our programs. We have about 15. We do a book review for you. We can get you as part of a syndicated column that goes to thousands and thousands of newspapers around the country. And we have this book club network, which we started in September of 2018. And pretty much every month we send books. You know, we have a finite number of books we can send to the book clubs. And that program has sold out just about every month. So that's been very, very exciting for us. A word about timing. You know, people will always ask, when's the best time for me to promote my book? For some people, pre-launch is important. Again, like I described with Dr. Hallowell and his podcast, we tried to build social people 3 months in advance. Depending on what you're doing, it's time for the buzz, you know, a few months in advance, but you know, and your website should follow that. I don't know if anybody knows an author that we work with. Her name is Valerie Taylor. If you went to her website or just checked her out on social media, you know, she's just writing. Her second book comes out, I think, in the next few weeks, but she does an excellent job of building the momentum on social media and through a bunch of programs. The launch day, I always say, you know, authors always say, you know, if you're going to do a review of my book, should you do it pre-launch, launch? I always like to say, if I can't go to a page where I can buy it or at least pre-order it, then you're probably missing an opportunity. Okay. So certainly you want it to be available at the time that some of these reviews are appearing. Again, it depends. If you have a lot of resources and can spend a lot of time building the momentum with reviews, okay, but try to focus on that launch day. Post-launch, here's the other thing. Don't go overboard on the launch day. Some people will invest their entire marketing budgets on the launch. It's all exciting for a day or a week. Then a month later, they're thinking, I've got absolutely nothing going now. Is Chuck Massili in this chapter, or is he in a different chapter? I don't remember.
In this chapter.
He's in this chapter?
Yes.
He sent me a marketing plan for his book that it was the most comprehensive thing I've ever seen. He had laid out, week by week, here's what I'm going to do. It was long, it was very detailed, it was excellent. It was excellent, but here was a guy that realized after the launch, I'm not done. I can't just pretend that was it and now I've got nothing going. So I think he did a small program with us, and we spaced the things out, but you also want to have something going or do some marketing or whatever programs you're investing in or planning. Don't stop after the launch, because a month later, you're going to be sitting around thinking, what happens now? And we get a lot of authors that have had books out for a year, a few years, and they say, can you help me market this, or is it all about new books? And I said, no, we absolutely can help you. And I say, if it was all about new books, then you'd walk into a bookstore, they'd have the front table with all the new books, and then you'd go to the shelves and they'd all be empty. And that's not the case, because the books are evergreen and authors are looking for a good story. And that's what it's all about. They're looking for a good story. They don't really care if it just came out or if it's been out for a while. Some of these books are called classics. You might have heard of them. They seem to do okay, and they didn't just come out. Just a final thought. If you do some marketing, you'll have no assurance, but some chance to get the word, to get some word, to get more well-known and to sell some books. If you do no marketing, you'll have every assurance that you will not get more well-known and not sell any books. So you've got to do something, and it's a competitive market out there. And I wish you all well, and anything we can do to help. I hope some of these comments have helped. So
yes, thank you.
So just in terms of contact info, Jim@booktrib.com is the one I'd want you to remember, and booktrib.com. If anybody wants to contact me afterwards, with further questions or talking about your specific book, or just, ideas that we kicked around, I'm happy to keep those going.
Thank you so much, Jim. There have been a couple of questions in the chat. Cindy asked, what are your thoughts about using TikTok? And then Martin asked, what's a blog tour?
Yeah, let me take the blog tour. The blog tour is, there are a variety of bloggers, and we have a program where, in a small period of time, each day or each week, another blogger will write about your book. So again, it's almost like if you were doing a tour at bookstores. Okay, the difference is it's bloggers, and bloggers, it's a bit more accountable, because how many followers they have, and we have access to a lot of them. So it's something that is more popular these days in marketing. Again, it's not for everybody, but the idea of going, again, you wouldn't be present, but different bloggers would be writing about your book from week to week, or whatever the time frame is. My thoughts about using TikTok. I don't have many thoughts about TikTok. Has anybody else? Has anybody tried it?
I have a TikTok.
And how's it going?
Pretty good. There's a whole book talk community, kind of
Yeah.
like on Instagram. There's Bookstagram. I got over 1,000 followers somewhat quickly, and I recently had a video get over 20,000 views. So it's pretty fun.
I'm going to stop the share for a bit just so I can see all of you. Hello. Yeah, I mean, I've heard good things about it. I've heard people have success. I don't know much about it specifically.
I tend to focus on Instagram, because I get a higher return on investment, I guess, because it's something that, if I have 100,000 followers on Instagram, and if I have 100,000 followers on Facebook, I get 3 times more like and engagement on Instagram than I do on Facebook. So that's just my personal view, but it's not for everybody, if that makes sense.
It does, and I would think that's I think most people would answer it that way who are equally active on both. I think they're getting better
Yeah.
response on Instagram.
Any other questions?
Well, I just wanted to say, thank you, Jim, so much. This was great. It was so informative. It was so helpful and made me very excited. I wanted to say, Dennis, that's so cool that Marie Osmond is following you. And I wanted to ask you on Instagram, you said that if you post something on Instagram as an influencer, I actually sneezed right when you said how many books that then sells. How
Oh.
many did you say that it sells?
It's okay if I post it in a story, which evaporates in 24 hours, it averages around 20 to 30 books that sell. So, and that gets seen by about 2,000, sometimes 2,500 people.
Cool. Thank you for that. And thank you again for this. Thank you, Jim. This was fantastic.
Well,
Appreciate
happy to do it. You know, I'm skimming down some of the chats and people are asking me various questions. The best way, you know, to follow up on some of those, again, jim@booktrib.com. And I'd be happy to address any of the
Jim, you can
questions.
put that in the comments. Everybody has your contact information.
I can put that in the comments where
Yeah.
just,
Just
Chat
type, yeah, the chat, sorry.
oh, okay. Whoops. What did I do? Oh, I see. Okay. Whoop. Well, thanks for the kind words. I mean, sometimes it can be a scary process and there's never any guarantee, but if you just take it, you know, have patience, believe in the work you've done and try to, you know, implement small things, you know, as best you can. The more times you can get in front of an audience, the better. You know, sometimes people will try one thing and say, let's see how it works. I can pretty much tell you how one thing will work. You know, I liken it to radio ads. Sometimes you're driving and you hear a radio ad, and the first time you hear it, the first thing you do is try to say, oh, I'm going to change the channel. Second time you hear it, you're probably thinking about what you have to do that day. Third time is the jingle starts to get annoying. And by about the fourth or fifth time, you stop and say, you know what, I might actually be able to use that product. Let me just listen to what it's about. It takes a few times of getting in front of an audience, if it's a group of readers, whatever it is, especially if you're not a household name with them or a best-selling author, of which there are many. And again, that's no disrespect to put you in that category, because again, some great stories come out of you know, out of this group. So any other questions I can answer or other thoughts, comments?
I'm not sure. Can you hear me or no?
Yes.
What's a good time to call you?
A good time to call me?
Yeah, you know, basically. So
Send me an email. I'm you know, if I tell you 6 in the morning to 9 at night, that's not inaccurate, but I'd rather have you call in the middle, anytime you want. If you
Okay.
send me an email, we'll set something up.
Okay, I have to say one more thing, which is interesting, somewhat humorous. All along, I guess I didn't read too much before. I thought you were saying book trip. So I was writing book trip with a
Oh,
Peter Paul.
well, we hear book trip, we hear book tribe, but it's trib, like short for Tribune.
Yeah.
I didn't make up the name, but that's the idea.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks. Yeah, so reach out and we'll set up a time. Okay,
That's awesome. Thank you.
great. Anybody else? It's coming to an end. Is that what you're telling me? Okay.
Thank you so much, Jim. This has been, every time, you know, I listen about marketing, I learn at least one new thing. And I think in this presentation, I probably learned half a dozen. So thank you
Great.
so much.
Great. Well, thanks again. Best wishes and best of luck to everybody. And again, happy to hear from you if there's anything I can help you with.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, everybody, have a great weekend. Be careful in the storm.
Thank you.